On today's show, we visit Book Love in Plymouth, talk with Human Resource Advisor Leah Saari and Kingston Fire Chief Mark Douglas, hear from Plymouth Public Library Director Kesley, follow along with Chef Jerry Levine as he prepares shrimp cocktail, and talk about upcoming things to do in our area. We're glad you're here. Let's get started. If the thought of getting called into a meeting with the HR department fills you with a sense of dread, you're not alone. But human resources is an asset and support for the employee as well as an organization. Tiff Phillips sat down with Human Resource Advisor Leah Saari of Reawaken Consulting to talk about the truth and misperceptions about HR.
I'm with Leah Saari, who is the owner of Reawaken Consulting. Welcome.
Hi, Tiff. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm so glad you made it onto the podcast. Very exciting. You are HR consultant, full disclosure, but it's very good. We're so excited to have you here because you are a wealth of knowledge. So let's get into it. Tell us about your background.
So I actually have an undergrad in social psychology, which was really fun for me because I really like people. And I had a business minor because why not? Right? When 2008 happened and we had that recession, I actually went back to school and got my first master's, and then I got a second one as an MBA.
Two.
Yes, I have two. I am an avid learner. I love education of whatever kinds. So after I had finished that, I got a number of certifications, all revolving around human resources, but training and development, human capital management, things like that.
You've worked with other organizations before creating your own business. I can imagine that's a little bit terrifying. What led you to make that decision?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I was a consultant for another company for years. And I've done this for a long time. But when COVID happened, there was that fear of what do you do if your employer shuts down? What do you do if these things aren't around? And I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. But I am a very resilient person. So I was speaking with friends and coworkers and whatnot, and they're like, you could do this yourself. And I was like, no, I don't know. And then I said, well, I could try. What harm is there? And then it exploded in a way that I was not prepared for. So it was just kind of a fluke thing that I tried.
How long did that transition take?
Not long. It was about a year and a half. And I was like, okay, well, that was fast. Mm-hmm.
What's the meaning behind the name Reawaken?
So one of the things that I wanted to do was remind people that you have to think about here and now. In our historic past in human resources and the way we run our businesses and the way we treat our people is not the same as it is today. And I had thought of a million names, but if you Google them, they're already used. And so I had to get to the point where I was like, okay, I still want to be me. And that's what I ended up with at the end was Reawaken.
So what's the significance of having a strong HR department or advisor with your organization?
So human resources is challenging. It changes all the time. The legislation, the way people behave, expectations in the workplace, and being able to stay abreast of that and run a business at the same time is easier said than done. If you have internal HR because you're blessed enough to have a staff of the size where you can support it, because remember, we're just a cost center, then, having a strong group with you can really help mold the direction that your company is going into. It can help mold how you retain your staff, what kind of staff you bring in, if you're going to stay current and be able to move forward. Because we can have the best ideas in the world. If you have no one to execute them, then what are you going to do? Now, if you can't do that, having an external consultant that can give you the guidance along the way is just as valuable. And that's usually the kind of clients that I end up with. Some have internal HR departments, but most are just looking for the guidance so they can do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. So you do work with organizations that already have existing HR departments.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's actually a nice extra step of them. That's really conscientious.
It's really fun, too, because that's when you get to do the really creative stuff, the really high level, how do I get this started? We have our foundation, but we want to do more. So how do we get there?
Right.
Because trying to do your job, internal HR, and come up with those things and design and develop them, not that easy. We only have so many hours in the day. So that's the really fun stuff.
So my question is, nobody likes to get a call down. You got to go down to the HR department. They need to talk to you. That's terrifying. How do you kind of dispel that stigma?
So that is actually a stigma that's been along for a long time. What I try to explain to people, and it's easier when they don't have in-house HR, is that that's the manager's role, is to give the hard messages, because the manager is the one that has the relationship with the person. So that shouldn't come to HR. It does, because we are professionals with different types of language, plus we're unbiased. These people don't report to us.
Right.
And so it's a lot easier to have conversations with people when you don't have a performance issue in your mind. Right? So when I'm speaking with people and when I'm sitting with managers, because I won't let them have me talk to them without the manager present, then it just gives them another voice or support so that they're not one-on-one with the employee. So the goal is immediately set the employee at ease, and then let's have a real conversation. And it has to be both ways. Please don't ever talk at people.
Right. So in a way, you're kind of an advocate for both the employee and the employer.
Absolutely.
That's a great role to be in.
You can't be one without the other.
Yeah.
You just can't.
There are a lot of generations now working in the workplace. So you have Gen X, you have Gen Z, you have millennials working along with, the boomer generation. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of span that gap? Like, how do you bring people together to work? Because everyone's got a little different working style.
Right. And crazy enough, it's not just generational, it's individual too.
Fair.
Because there are people that are millennials that have very much boomer thought processes. It's how you're raised, what environments you've worked in, all of those things. Spanning that gap is more about understanding individuals than it is about understanding generations. When we talk in generations, we're speaking in generalities and biases.
Right.
You cut down to the people and you can fix that.
So technology is moving at the speed of light. We have a lot of things coming our way, especially artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So my question is how is HR being impacted by AI?
It's actually in a really beneficial way.
Really?
Because there are things that are really task-oriented that I just don't feel are a good use of anyone's time. And if you can automate tasks, and if you can automate systematic things that don't involve talking to people, then you're going to save a lot of time and energy. Anyone would. And so if you're able to focus on that interaction and what that leads to, let the AI do the technology part. Why would I sit there and type into a keyboard when someone else will do it for me? And they're smarter than I am.
Yeah. Now, have you had any issues with it being in the workplace? Are people using AI to kind of get around doing the work, so to speak?
Sometimes, but you also have to understand it enough in order to do that. So in the same respect, I actually have a lot of respect for them for figuring that out.
True.
But they have to go back and check the work because AI learns. It's not perfect from the get-go.
Right. So
if they're not going back and putting in the effort to make sure it's working right, then they didn't really get around anything.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So what are some missteps that an organization or business has in communicating with its employees?
Not.
Oh, fair. Fair.
Not. I think transparency is something that people put in a different light than they need to. So when we're talking about our organization, there's certain things that owners and executives don't want to share with employees, but they forget about the parts that they can.
Right.
I'm not saying open your checkbook to people and say, this is what we have, this is what we don't have. But don't lead people in the dark so they don't know where they're going. And after COVID should have taught us all that.
Yeah.
Because if people don't know where they stand and they don't understand how they're contributing, then they're going to lose interest and go find some place that can.
Right.
So you have to have open lines of communication. And that doesn't mean, say, make an appointment with me and I'll speak to you at this hour, at this day, and that's the only way they can get in touch with you, because no one's going to make that effort anymore. They want to know that they can just reach out and get an answer. Sometimes things like Slack or whatnot make that a lot easier to people. But we also have to know when it's okay to do something via text or email and when you really have to have that conversation, either on the phone or in person. there are certain things you just can't do with technology, like hear tone.
Right. Fair. That's a big problem with communication. I get an email sometimes. I'm like, I don't know how to read this.
Exactly. I'm like, I think I just took that really personally.
Right. You don't know the intent behind it. Do you find that workplaces are now treating their employees as the whole person rather than just kind of the thing or person that does the work?
The good ones are.
Yeah.
No, I do see that. That's much more progressive, and companies that understand that you have to really look at the whole picture are much more successful today. It is tough. It is tough to see the whole thing because you have to know more about your staff than we've ever known before. And some people are uncomfortable with sharing that information as well. And then we make assumptions because we're like, okay, well, we want to protect someone's well-being, but we only know how we protect our own. And if they've not asked us for anything, then we're just going to assume what works for us works for them because we don't want to not give people what they need. That communication has to happen both ways. And you'd be surprised how often the employees don't come forward.
I mean, a lot of people are probably scared to, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will say employees got to remember to give someone a chance before they shut down. And sometimes past experiences stop us from doing that. But just ask. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Right.
You know?
Speaking of asking, so what kind of questions should a person ask during an interview to make sure that job is specific and right for them?
So I'm going to give you 3 really big tips here. The first thing is you need to know before you start your interview what their pay range is. And you need to decide if that's something that you are interested in, because I can promise you they're not going to fluctuate from that. They can't ask you what you make now, which is appropriate, but you need to know what your standard is, because otherwise you're wasting everyone's time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing. The number 2 thing is you need to understand what the job description really is. When people are posting jobs, they give you an overview or whatnot. I usually tell people, ask for the full job description before your interview so you can review the things that you're going to be responsible for and then ask intelligent questions about either what does that mean? What does that entail? Is that a group of people I'm working with? Or am I solely responsible? And then you really need to know if you're going to manage people. Sometimes you're not told how many or how few people are on your team, and if you are the manager of that team or not the manager. And that makes a lot of difference also. I have friends that are extremely professional, intelligent men and women, but they said, I will never manage a person. Ever. And I'm like, okay, but you're a VP. And they're like, no, I have directors for that.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. Fair.
It's one way to do it.
But those 3 things are the most vital to understanding if you want the role or not, because the risk is just as high for the candidate as it is for the employer. So when the employer's interviewing, they already know what they want. You have to know what you want too.
Fair. You got to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. And now's the time.
Yeah. There are a lot of industries right now that are battling high turnover rates. How do they combat that?
Get creative.
Yeah.
Get creative and ask. Ask your staff, what are you missing? What do we do well? What could we do better? And then really focus on what that means for the business. Some things, unfortunately, can't be changed.
Right.
There are certain aspects of businesses you can't get around, and that's either a federal requirement or just part of the job itself that's never going to be able to be adjusted. But then there are other things that nobody can come up with. Or you wouldn't know unless you ask the question. So you have to stay in front of it. The other is you really have to pay attention to your market, because if you're seeing jobs posted, let's say, for similar roles, and they're offering all these things that you are not, you need to really rethink that. And when I say get creative, the other piece is stop saying no before you hear the whole question. Most people, when they have a question, they'll give you the solution. You just have to ask, what do you think it should be?
All right, I'm going to think about that. Yeah. So what's the best part of your job? What makes you get up in the morning being like, I love what I do. I can't wait to go to work?
It's a really basic answer. I love being able to walk away from a meeting, an interaction, a client, a project, knowing that I gave them something they didn't have before. I gave them knowledge that they then can use. Whether they ever call me again or not because I gave them exactly what they needed, I'm good as long as I can feel like that person felt educated. They felt like what they did served their own purpose. Some might not do it. And that's okay, as long as I know that they got what they asked for.
Yeah. So in your way, you're just making your little difference in the world. I love it.
I'm making my little tiny difference.
I love it. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Leah, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Join Mass Audubon and the Plymouth Public Library for the Tidmarsh Vernal Pool Nature Walk around the sanctuary on Saturday, April 13th from 12:30 to 2 p.m. While exploring the area and looking for the springtime emergence of critters like frogs and salamanders, you'll learn about vernal pool species and their ingenious tactics for winter survival. Part of the One Book, One Community program, this program is free to the public due to generous support from the America the Beautiful initiative. This will be an unforgettable experience for all ages. Hop on over to massaudubon.org to sign up. Registration is required. The Tidmarsh Wildlife Sanctuary is at 60 Beaver Dam Road in Plymouth. From the late 1700s to the mid-1800s, shipbuilding was the mainstay industry of the town of Duxbury. On those ships, of course, traveled seafaring folk from around the world, many who chose to settle down in the idyllic seaside town. On Saturday, April 27th from 3 to 4:30 p.m., join Carolyn Ravenscroft of the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society for a walking tour of the Mayflower Cemetery, where you'll visit the gravesites of Duxbury's staunch sailors and their steadfast wives. Mayflower Cemetery is at 774 Tremont Street in Duxbury. Tickets are required. Visit duxburyhistory.org to get yours. Always a space for bibliophiles to explore worlds behind titles they may decide to take home with them. The concept of what a bookstore should be has evolved over time. We took a trip to Book Love in South Plymouth to see how this local hotspot is bringing more than the printed page to the community.
I was at a point where I wasn't sure what my next step professionally was, but I'd always enjoyed sharing books and building upon books and exchanging ideas and exploring and building on conversations. And, you know, I thought for myself, I think that's something I'd like to do. My favorite bookstore growing up was in Nantucket. I'm from Detroit. We ended up vacationing out there with relatives each summer, and Nantucket Bookworks was the place that I'd go and just fell in love every single time. I would be so overwhelmed by the things that they had in there, which they had so thoughtfully sourced from all over. Art supplies, books, knickknacks, gifts, little toys and games. And it really became a really kind of core part of my childhood, this store of all places, with myself and my cousins. I remember the release of Harry Potter's and going to the store late at night on vacation, and so I had fond memories. It turns out that my husband, John, knows the owner of that store's mother and had worked with her in a professional capacity, and said, why don't I reach out and find out from that store owner, who I know you respect, whether a bookstore is even something that we can sustain in today's economy, and in the Pine Hills more specifically. So Wendy Hudson, the owner of that store, came for breakfast, and I explained this vision that we had of what we thought this retail space could be. And she said, yeah, let's write the business plan. And my jaw dropped, because I've really kind of been a true fan of this woman in business and what she's created and what the feeling she was able to inspire her and her peers and me as a kid. So when presented with this opportunity, I think both Wendy and I, to be in this particular space, had a bit of an aha moment where we, in our mind's eye, could fully conceptualize what this store could be and how we could build it with the input from Bizzuto and from the Pine Hills to fit kind of our vision differently than we could have elsewhere. But it was a long-term construction project. So at the time we came to the Pine Hills and said, look, we'd like to start building this business, you know, and if you have space, we'd love to do a pop-up. And they offered the Red Crate to us, and that's how we began. I think the key takeaways from the crate were kind of just a scrappy start. We knew where we wanted to go, and we knew that we were going to have to wait. But it gave us a very meaningful point of connection with the community, and certainly troubleshooted what books do we have in stock, what are we going to offer, what are people responding to, gave us this great data set from which to then make some next determinations as to how the business would go. You know, we fell in love with people's pets, built great relationships that carry through to today, and let people know we were coming. Again, book selling is not a high margin business, so to have this window of time that we didn't necessarily choose to have, in which we could build our collection, people could come to know us, could have an experience of book love, was really meaningful.
I live in the community, and Katie had set up the container out at the beer garden, and I came by one day when Kira was working, and I had just left, I was the general manager for Tickham's Bookshop over on Cape Cod, and I'd left that, but I just really wanted to have books in my life. So I approached them and just said, if you're ever looking for somebody to sell books. So for me, it came on later. They did all the hard work. I just came in for the easy part, which is come in and get to have fun with the books and sell them. There's so much heart and soul in this space, and I watched Katie really sweat over the details here, and she's just done such a spectacular job. She has all of us giving her our favorite books, saying to her, like I can say to her, this book was so good, and I just know I can have somebody go home with this one. And so for me, I'm a constant reader. I have been for years and years. I definitely have certain styles that I love, but I would say that hand-picking each and every book is the experience that has us just way above and beyond an Amazon or an online site, because again, people can come in and we can have that conversation with them about what these books are. We know these books. And if I don't know that particular book, there's probably somebody else behind the counter that does. So that's what makes it really special and unique.
There's just something warm and cozy about a local bookstore where you can go in, have a cup of coffee, maybe read the newspaper. I oftentimes buy a book whether I need to or not, because I want to just make sure that I'm not taking advantage of the local place. But they always have specialized books that you don't normally get elsewhere. Plus, they're easy to find. The people are a lot more knowledgeable rather than people in those, you know, big bookstores like Barnes and Nobles and those kind of places, which to me was just not intimate enough. So the fact that this book love is here now, boy, that's a great addition to the community. It's just that this is a somewhat of a retirement community, but just the ability to come over here in an afternoon, grab a cup of coffee or a little tea with my wife, or sit down, or I'm kind of a big foodie. I love reading books. I'm big on breads and pastas, and so I'll come in here and do a little research, have a cup of coffee, and maybe leave with a book. Nothing like it.
People have asked for these books, and that's why we carry them. We have what we have here because, again, someone has asked for this title to be part of our collection, or someone in the community has written this title, and we want their work represented because community is important to us. So I think, I think as much as it wasn't in our designs that we would start in a red shipping container and then move into an interim space and then finally open our doors here, I definitely think it's exactly as it should have been. Whether or not it was by our design, it certainly made for a really, really wonderful opening, and it feels like we're in a really good spot today.
I hope that lots of people find book love. I hope that a lot of book clubs, book groups come in and utilize the space. We're hoping to have some live music, just a space for people to feel comfortable, to feel like they have a place to meet friends. It doesn't have to be a bar, it doesn't have to be going out to dinner, but it's nice sometimes just to have a bookstore, just where you can relate to other people. And like I said, this space is really unique because everyone who walks in the door loves books.
I consider myself a lifelong learner, even though I'm kind of advanced in age. I think you learn till the day you die. That's just my philosophy. So, a lot of people feel like, their learning ends when they end school, and, nothing could be further from the truth. One of my favorite activities is exploration. Exploration being anything, whether it's taking trips or, frankly, living vicariously through books. So I'll read a lot of adventure books, I read a lot of history books, a lot of biography books. I love the learning process, which is part of exploration. It's helped me in my teaching too. I'm a professor at Northeastern, and I often have anecdotes and things that I pick up in books that I will use in my teaching. So that helps as well. Bookstores like this are a treasure. They need to be supported as far as I'm concerned. I will support it, and I hope they wind up having many customers.
We ourselves have a lot of desires in terms of things, programming to add in ways that we think can reach more people. We have some interesting collaborations with local partners, businesses, nonprofits, etc. There are an incredible number of local authors, both self-published to award-winning, well-known. I think we just want to keep building. I want to continue to invest in a team that enjoys what they do every day, that feels like they have purpose, that knows they have one another's back. I want to continue to build relationships with people in the community, and so that, again, people know they have another place to go outside their home where they're recognized, ideally by name, and whenever they want, they can pop in and know that they're safe and cared for, and again, hopefully experience some of that joy. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the punchline is we are just trying to build the thing that we want for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our children, and I think if everyone had that opportunity, we'd all be in a better place.
Revel in sounds from around the globe on Saturday, April 13th at the Spire Center in Plymouth, with performances by 3 premier world music bands. Brooklyn's Kaleda and Super Yamba Band are fronted by West African singer-guitarist Leon Ligon Majake, aka Kaleda, an Afrobeat and Juju veteran who grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, where the style was born. He has toured and recorded with renowned musicians Fela Kuti, King Sunny Ade, Lauryn Hill, and more. Also on the bill is Latin American and pop band Sambita, who interlace classics from South and Central America with pop hits from the United States, moving seamlessly between salsa, merengue, cumbia, bachata, Latin, and pop from all decades.
If you think I'm burning out, I'll give a hand.
Peruvian board guitar wizard Carlos Odria lights up the stage with original tunes and arrangements of jazz standards, shaded with an international blend of bossa nova, Afro-Peruvian festejo, rumba flamenca, and Afro-Caribbean vibes performed with an improvisational approach inspired by the tradition of American jazz. Be sure not to miss the opening act, an exceptional performance of traditional Chinese dance by local award-winning Tai Chi expert and coach Fang Chi Lee, whose group performed at the Spire Center's opening night a decade ago. The popular local musicians, the Lindsays, will perform Irish jigs and reels, old ballads, and contemporary songs on the lobby stage. Doors open at 5:30 and the music plays at 6:30 p.m. Purchase your World Music Festival tickets on the website or through the Spire Center box office. Poetry, William Wordsworth considered, is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion, recollected in tranquility. Join the poetry community in relishing the feeling and flow of words at a reading and open mic hosted by the Kingston Public Library on Thursday, April 25th. The evening will begin at 6:30 p.m. when featured local poets Noah Brown and Sheila Lynch Bentonen read selections of their original poetry. After which, attendees will have an opportunity to read their own work or to recite a favorite poem. Sign up for your open mic spot the night of the show. Pieces should be no longer than 3 minutes. This event takes place at Font School, located at 16 Green Street in Kingston. Next up, Julie Thompson takes a closer look at the town of Kingston.
Welcome. Today we're going to take a closer look at the Kingston Fire Department and specifically with the Chief, Mark Douglas. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, you've been in Kingston a very long time. Talk a little bit about your length of tenure with this town.
Very long time. I started off in 1983 as a call firefighter and a dispatcher. In 1984, I was, well, we call it promoted or moved over to full-time. In 1994, I became a captain, the shift commander.
Yeah.
In 2006, deputy, and then I always mess this up, 2017, fire chief.
Wow. So your entire career has been with the town of Kingston.
It has, yep.
A lot of changes you've seen, I'm sure.
A lot of changes, both the department as well as the community.
Yeah.
Significant changes. In
Right.
both.
So the department now, how many full-time, part-times, how many staff do you have?
2 stations, 24 people. We added 4 this year to to assist, I should say, with the growing call volume.
Yeah.
And so we have a total of 24 line staff, a captain on each shift, 5 firefighters now on each shift. The deputy and myself are in administration along with the administrative assistant.
Right.
In addition to that, we still maintain 5 call firefighters.
Okay. Just in case.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we have, we're trying to develop a little bit of a farm team, quite
Yep.
honestly. Some younger people that are willing to go to school and become full-time firefighters.
Yeah.
Good firefighters, like many other professions now, are hard to find.
Yeah.
So we've tried to develop, or are trying to develop, a bit of a farm team.
Farm team,
for
yeah,
that.
like in baseball. So of your firefighters, almost all of them are paramedics?
Yeah.
And can you just say the
nearly all.
differentiation between an EMT and a paramedic?
Sure. I hate to say it this way, but the lowest level, if you will, the lowest level of training is an EMT, a basic EMT, and
Yeah.
they can perform certain functions. It's certainly not first aid. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
The next level is advanced EMT, which is some level of advanced skills.
Sure.
And lastly, paramedic, or at the highest level, paramedic.
Yeah.
They can do numerous life-saving advanced skills.
Okay. So what, in a general week, what is the majority of your calls that come in?
Medical.
They're almost all medical?
There's no question that the largest percentage, 70%-ish of what we do, is medicals.
Yep.
We did last year, I believe it was 3,057 calls, which is the highest call volume we've done ever.
Wow.
We went over 3,000 for the first time, as I said, ever.
Yeah.
And the large majority of that is EMS, in the 2,500-ish region. Is EMS.
Okay. So when you're saying you have medical calls, are these mostly from things in a home or things in an automobile?
Oddly enough, there's not one particular area that is larger than another. You have some respiratory, cardiac, those kind of things
Yep.
that are just more prevalent, especially in communities with elderly
Sure.
complexes, if you will, like
Right.
we have. So the respiratory, the cardiac, those kinds of things are a little more prevalent, but statistically speaking, there's no one large player in terms of chief complaints. It's all over the place.
Now, when it comes to safety in the home, I noticed on your website you have various information about how to do different things to keep your home safe, keep your family safe. How important is that for your residents to understand their part in keeping themselves safe?
Very, and one of the things I think you and I were talking about before this segment was Facebook, and we've started to take advantage of Facebook now and the media platforms a lot more than we used to.
Sure.
That information, of course, is very important. You can find so much of it on Google. You can find it on our site with different links, stuff like that. So that's been super important, and I think it's been super successful, honestly. We do get a lot of good feedback on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
The Mass Department of Fire Services puts out a lot of stuff on their Facebook as well as their website that we share or link.
Yeah.
Those are all great resources.
Now, do you do outreach to the community, like in terms of going to the schools?
We do.
What type of outreach do you do?
We do. We do the schools annually. We try to get out to the schools with some of our educators and do the school programs like we've always done. God, I remember in 1971 I was in a school program, so we've consistently done that throughout. But fire prevention and elderly safety, all of those things have really become a year-round event now, or a multitude of events. So we try to practice those throughout the year. It used to be confined pretty much to October, which was Fire Prevention Month. Right? And now we're trying to just spread it out throughout the year and be a constant, like constant pressure, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you do that with the schools. Do you also do that in conjunction with the COA?
We do. There's many programs that go on at the COA, and we try to be as active as we can.
Yep.
I'd love to have the resources to have a full-time fire prevention officer to be as active as we'd like to be, I guess, is the best way to put it. But we just don't have those resources yet.
Okay. So speaking of fires, how often do you actually get called on a fire?
Not as often as we used to, thank God. I don't have the statistic off the top of my head, but I think last year's structure fires was maybe 25, give or take, of varying sizes, everything from a small wastebasket or outlet to a fully involved house.
Right.
So it runs the gamut within those 25 items. Obviously some worse than others.
Right. Do you get calls for like in the homes, their fire detectors are going off there, or carbon monoxide, people using things incorrectly? Are some of your calls that?
Pretty regularly, yeah. We do go out to the carbon monoxides. One of the things that's new, if you will, to us is there were a lot of 7-year detectors, they call them, that people bought, and now they're starting to come up on their 7 years.
Yeah.
So they're starting to beep, and people get concerned, and then we'll go out, we'll meet at the house, make sure that it's not an issue, and then tell them to replace the detector.
Okay.
And we do that quite a bit.
Okay. So looking ahead, what are the challenges that your department faces?
So the challenges, I think, go along on the business side, and that's the best way to put that. On the business side, it's always money, right? I mean,
Always.
It's always difficult to fund everything you'd like to fund, so you have to prioritize, and we do that. I think we do that fairly well. I think we've got a town that's very supportive of us, which is exceptional in my eyes.
Yeah.
But as far as goals go, really we want to maintain the service that we currently maintain on the emergency side, because that should always be a priority. That's what we're there for.
Right.
We've got about a 6-minute plus minus response time to most areas of towns and most emergencies, so we're trying to maintain that, i.e. the new staff. So that's our primary goal, is to provide that service. Aside from that, how do we support that is the other goals, really, which is training. We've got a lot of new people, and we're going to have a lot more as my generation, God, I hate to say that, but my generation ages out.
Sure.
And so when you bring in new people, there's no substitute for experience. The only attempt at substituting experience is training. So next year it's training, and more training. And that's really the goal for this coming year.
And how do you train, like a first-year firefighter? What type of training do they go through?
Mass Fire Academy.
Okay.
Not unlike the police, there's an academy for fire.
Yeah.
It's an 11-week academy. It gives you all the basics of firefighting, and then when they come back from that, they do department training, which is our apparatus, our tools, how to operate, working with the staff that you have there, because that's a huge component of what we do, working as a team. And it's just repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition and repetition and repetition.
To see this interview in its entirety, please visit the Local Scene Government Services YouTube page.
Old Colony Elder Services, an organization supporting the independence and dignity of older adults and individuals with disabilities, invites you to Bringing Health to You, a roundtable discussion at the Pembroke Council on Aging on April 24th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Facilitated by OCES Outreach and Education Specialist Patricia Levine, the first part of the program will focus on topics including healthy eating, fall prevention, volunteering, stress and anxiety, mental health, and pain management. Roundtable attendees will then choose a topic they'd like to learn more about and will spend the remainder of the session receiving more helpful information on that subject. All participants will enjoy a free lunch. Sign up through the Pembroke Council on Aging. The council is at 144 Center Street in Pembroke. What did children do to keep busy when gaming, music, and other media on demand didn't exist? Spoiler alert, they had plenty to do, and you can send your children age 8 through 13 back in time to prove it. On Wednesday, April 17th, the Alden House's Colonial Adventure Camp will immerse kids in a day of some old school fun. Colonial times old school, with hands-on activities, games, and crafts from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. With the oversight and guidance of museum educators, they'll cook over a fire, spin wool into thread, learn to write using a quill and ink, participate in some archaeology, and dip candles by hand. It is all taking place at the Alden House Historic Site in Duxbury, where descendants of Mayflower passengers John and Priscilla Mullins Alden called home for generations. The cost is $20 for members and only $5 more for non-members. Advance registration is required. Email director@alden.org. 6 decades of songs, a combined 27 Grammys, and a legacy of chart-topping hits that changed the music industry forever. On April 27th and 28th, the Plymouth Philharmonic invites you to the Queens of Rock and Soul, a musical celebration honoring the lives and careers of powerhouse superstars Tina Turner and Aretha Franklin. Vocalists Tamika Lawrence and Shalea Atkinson join the Phil in this So Cool It's Hot Grand Diva celebration. No river deep or mountain high should keep you from getting to this show. For tickets, visit plymouthphil.org. Rescue Plymouth Wildlife is a coalition committed to making Plymouth a healthier community for local wildlife and people. RPW's top priority is the harmful impact of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides on local wildlife. Pest management professionals use these pesticides to treat rat infestations, which kills the rodent, but also the animals that feed on them as well as their young. The goal of Rescue Plymouth Wildlife is to develop sustainable solutions to this issue in collaboration with the town of Plymouth, and they are asking for your help. On April 10th, join RPW's public kickoff meeting at the Plymouth Public Library from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Mass Audubon will begin the meeting with a presentation, followed by an update from founder Will Fitzgerald. You'll hear about RPW's strategies and resources on how you can help preserve Plymouth's natural heritage for the generations to come. To register, visit the organization's website. Here's a message from the Plymouth Public Library.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Casey, the director of the Plymouth Public Library. We're thrilled to announce our new status as a division within HHS, bringing you even more resources and support. Michelle Brady, our first Health and Human Services Commissioner, will ensure that you continue to receive exceptional library services. Exciting news, we've launched a brand new app called My Libro, designed to make your library experience more accessible and enjoyable. With My Libro, you can easily browse our shelves, explore the extensive collection on Libby and Hoopla, stay updated with our event calendar, and connect with us on social media. And we know you enjoyed our Reading Rivals competition, where Team North prevailed over Team South. Starting March 1st, we're participating in the statewide Minute Madness Challenge. 23 libraries across the state will compete to see who can read the most minutes. Sign up on our website. Join us in embracing the future of library services within HHS, and let's make the Plymouth Public Library your go-to destination for knowledge, community, and fun. See you at the library.
Here's Chef Jerry Levine serving up some delicious shrimp cocktail.
Well, today we are going to do one of the most popular appetizers that one would be buying in a restaurant. And it's basically a shrimp cocktail. Now, what's a shrimp cocktail? Well, a shrimp cocktail is made from shrimp. And this size shrimp here is what is called 31/40s. And that means 31 to 40 counts per pound. So the larger the number, the smaller the shrimp. Now, shrimp normally will come with a shell and on the tail as well as the sides, and it comes in a number of different ways. One of the most popular kinds is what is called easy peel, which has got a cut along the back, and that does two things. One is it opens up the shell, so all you have to do with your thumbs is just spread it apart and it falls away. The other thing that it does is that there is a vein in the back, and it's called a sand vein, but what it really is the intestinal tract. And the purpose of removing that is because there may be sand in it. So that's what that is called. Now, these are 3140s. All right. Now, this is a bit of a smaller shrimp. In a restaurant, you're probably going to get a 2025, or maybe a 1520. But anyway, this is the raw shrimp. How do we know it's raw? Because it's not red, and this is cooked shrimp. Now, what are we going to do? We are going to take and do a recipe that is essentially using the typical way of cooking shrimp, which is generally in water, maybe a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of lemon juice. But I was in New York City, and I happened to have a shrimp cocktail because my daughter-in-law said, "Jerry, this is the best shrimp cocktail anybody's ever done. Can you figure out what's in here?" So, as a matter of fact, I did. So I went home, and ultimately I decided I'm going to use a little dried basil, a little bit of cumin, and one of my favorite things, a bay leaf. Okay, what did I do? I put that into the water that I was cooking with, and I added a tiny little bit of lemon juice. Now, what was the purpose of this? It was to intensify the flavor of the shrimp. Did I want the bay leaf or the cumin to stand out as a predominant thing? No, I did not, because I still wanted the shrimp. I wanted these other things to complement the shrimp. So we put it in there, and we put it into our pan, and we put all of our ingredients into the pan, and we brought it up to a slow boil. Then I put the shrimp in, and I cooked the shrimp for exactly 3 minutes, and I set a timer. And the purpose of that is I didn't want to overcook it, and I didn't want to undercook it. So this is what I ended up with here. Now, what are we going to serve this with? Well, normally we serve it with what is called a cocktail sauce. So the cocktail sauce, you can either buy one in the supermarket, you can get it in the restaurant. Well, I developed a cocktail sauce which I really like. And it's made with a chili sauce. It's made with ketchup, a little bit of Worcestershire, a little bit of lemon juice, and one of my favorite things in life, Tabasco. Okay, so we've got a little heat, and we've got different flavors, and then it comes out looking like this here. And look at the texture of it, and that is the way it should be. You don't want it too soft, and you don't want it very thick. So what do we do with it? Well, next thing we want to do is we want to go about plating it. Now, but before we plate it, we want everything chilled, right, refrigerated for about an hour. So you want your shrimp refrigerated, you want your cocktail sauce refrigerated. And why do we want it refrigerated? Because the shrimp that is refrigerated has a really nice snap when it is eaten out of the refrigerator. So you want to try to get the shrimp and the cocktail sauce to be about the same temperature, which is going to be refrigerated. All right, first off, how do we serve it? Well, you can serve it on a number of ways. You can serve it on just a plate with a little cocktail sauce, or you can take one of my favorite things to serve things with, and as well as I don't mind drinking a martini now and then, and which I think is wonderful. And we're going to take a little lettuce leaf, and we are going to add some cocktail sauce to the lettuce leaf. We're going to put that right in the center, and we're going to make up 2 of these guys, and we're going to take the shrimp and we're going to put it on the outside and make it so it kind of looks nice. And we eat with our eyes and our nose and our mouth in that order. And let's do 5 of them. Okay, because these are little guys. So we'll do 5. There we go. We've got one, and now we're going to do another one. And we're going to put the sauce in there like that. And we're going to take and do 5 again. And the shape and the way we're decorating it is so critical. And you know, people like to go in, especially if you're in a restaurant. And as I said, shrimp cocktail is probably the most loved or favored things that one gets when they go into a restaurant, as an apple. Okay. We now have that, and we have and you'll notice that I use 2 different sizes of martini glasses. Why did I do that? Because the higher one looks bigger and maybe a little bit fuller, and the lower one, and we'll put it right like that, so we get a good look at it. I personally like the smaller one, but I wanted to show you the difference, the visual difference about how it looks with one size versus the other. So, we have a little bit of shrimp cocktail left over, and my sous chef here, Mr. Metal Heron, which is really designed as a green heron, is standing by, probably trying to get himself a piece of shrimp, which, yeah, there may be some left over, and there's certainly some left over for my producer, who likes to eat a lot. But I just wanted to show you how to do this. Now, let's talk about shrimp. Where does shrimp come from? Where does shrimp come from? Shrimp is basically throughout all the oceans, and it is a saltwater animal. It is also farmed, and it is farmed in places like Florida and Vietnam and areas in South America, as well as Central America, and there are a huge number of shrimp, different species of shrimp, and they all have a very different characteristic. So, but one of my favorite shrimps happens to be what is called a red shrimp, and it comes from the Carolinas, and it is just dynamite. We really don't have any natural shrimp up here in the New England area, but so we get them imported from places like India and Vietnam, and they normally come in frozen, and a frozen shrimp is good. And if you can get a fresh shrimp, you probably end up in southern Florida or Louisiana or someplace like that, and you can get a frozen or fresh shrimp there, and they are simply dynamite. The shrimp boats are these boats that have these 2 massive masts on the side of them. They're called outriggers. When they're fishing, they drop them down like this here, and they tow nets from here and here, and then they haul the nets back in there, and then they ice them down, and that is the way they do it. So, what do we have here? We have delicious shrimp cocktail, as well as a delicious shrimp that we have flavored with a number of different things. So, to all of you, enjoy your appetizer, enjoy your shrimp, and try adding some spices. And please feel free, we will give you the recipe for the liquid that we cook them in, and you're really going to love this. Okay, thank you for watching Delicious and Nutritious. Looking forward to the next time we get together. Take care. Bye now.
And that, my friends, wraps what's good and good to know this week on the local scene. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. For more of what's good and good to know on the South Shore of Massachusetts, hit the subscribe button. And thank you for watching.